May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. I was sitting Tuesday morning in the church office with Deb Venancio. Hi, Deb. I know you're snowed in today. And we began looking at the lectionary for today. And Deb looked at me and she said, yeesh, oh my goodness. The readings this week are so scary and depressing. Now, Deb's not wrong, right? Deb's not wrong. Today's readings do tap into really intense apocalyptic themes. Remember, apocalypse means a revelation of truth that we haven't seen before, and not necessarily the end of times like we'd understand from our cultural references and current movies. But it's also true that Deb has a keen emotional intelligence and is always tuned in to how people around her are feeling. Maybe that's a nurse thing. We are in a state of heightened anxiety, and not just in our community here at Emmanuel, but in the wider community, the state, the country, and around the world. The news cycle is a constant barrage of threat of immediate change to our lives on every level, brand new governmental departments created without input from Congress, visible action to change immigration, healthcare, government assistance programs, financial and individual privacy, international human aid. What have I missed? You all add in, right? These are programs and systems that impact all of us, and we care deeply about them, no matter how we voted in November. So let's keep our eye on the ball here and not get distracted by our own fears and anxieties. Because even as we care deeply about these issues that affect us all, about half of us, right down the middle of every region, demographic group, workplace, community, and in many cases, even families, saw a different best way forward in November. And here's the intensifier. The rate at which these hot-button issues and changes fly at us on a daily basis keeps us reeling. The news outlets and analysts can't even cover it all, so how on earth could we do it? How could we keep up? It's like a game of 16-square whack-a-mole at Chuck E. Cheese, right? We just can't anticipate what will pop up next and where, so we begin to feel overwhelmed. We may not like this style of governing. I know I don't. But it's completely intentional. The idea is to flood the zone, as they say, with a fire hose blast of new proposals and methods every single morning to consume our attention for the news cycle while policy and administrative change drives forward, with the intent that at least something will have stuck by the end of the day. Now, keep in mind, this style of governing is not meant to be collegial or collaborative, to draw communities together, to find common ground. That's blindingly obvious, right? Instead, the end game here is to tear at the fabric of our community, defeat our sense of the common good, and drive us all to our ideological corners in a dark cloud of incredulity and outrage, with every opinion we ever held confirmed, and any curiosity about the merit in our neighbors' views shut down without any hope of reconsideration. While I certainly prefer a collaborative, collegial approach to governance, I can't deny that this divide and conquer strategy is effective. It certainly has all of us on our back foot, as our British friends would say. And here's another thing. Wait, let me check my email first, just to be sure. No. I haven't yet been elected to any office or appointed to any position where my views on good governance, loyal opposition, and respectful collegial disagreement have been sought. There's still hope. So how do we hold our community together and resist the impulse to demonize and vanquish our neighbors just because they have a different perspective on the best way forward? How do we listen to each other with genuine curiosity about each other's lived experience and perspective, and always ready to learn something new or change our minds? I wonder if times like now, times like ours today, led our ancestors in the faith to their experiences with God that we read about this morning. Isaiah finds himself in this unbelievable, very dramatic, even stressful condition. He's in the temple, dwarfed by the Lord on the throne, almost crowded out the door by the very hem of the Lord's robe. At least two, probably more seraphs. We know that because one calls to the other, right? At least two, probably more seraphs. They're the most important, the largest, and the most senior in the 9 hierarchies of angels. This is a big deal, right? They're hovering over him. One even flies to him to touch his lips with a live coal. Can you imagine the rush of wind from at least 4 enormous wings keeping these at least two enormous seraphs aloft, while they held their other 2 pairs of wings? So there's at least 4 more wings in this place. 1 pair over each of their eyes and 1 pair over their feet. And then all that before the door hinges shook and the temple filled with smoke. That's such a lot, right? And I think we can all relate to Isaiah's paralysis in that moment. Woe is me, he says, I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips. That might be our version of, what am I supposed to even do about this? There are those in our community who are sailors and others who are descended from fisher folk. So maybe Peter's fishing trip with Jesus feels less threatening than Isaiah's experience in the temple. But it's clear Simon Peter is also absolutely overwhelmed when he confronts the implications of an unexpected catch so large that it threatens to sink not 1 but 2 fishing boats. Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man, Peter says. So how do we, reluctant and overwhelmed people of God in our time, like Isaiah and Peter, how do we respond? I think we must cultivate our garden. We need to learn about what grows best in our soil here, how to enrich it, cultivate more of it, engage more of us in the process, and nourish more of us with its fruits. My professor husband laughed earlier this week when I said we must cultivate our garden, recognizing immediately, of course, the borrowed line from Voltaire's novel Candide. And there are, of course, layers of nuance in that 18th century satire about the optimism, blind optimism of the Enlightenment. But the simplicity and grounded reality of the garden, both as a metaphor and as a foundational reality, gives us a concrete next right step in a complex world where the very strategy of current leadership is to highlight and demonize our differences rather than encourage us to see the best way forward for the common good. Back to cultivating our garden. So for all of us who are literalists, you know who we are, I'm not saying that each of us needs to go dig in the dirt on the corner out here. But I do think we need to dig deep into our community, to till and enrich the soil, plant and tend seeds of conversation and relationship, and grow together in understanding and connection. Do we make signs in March? Post up our outrage on Facebook? Write letters to our representatives or to whatever news outlet will take them? Maybe. But let's be sure that as we do that, we don't lose sight of each other, our community, and what we have in common, which is our understanding that we thrive together or not at all. Because this world cannot go forward as a zero-sum game where half of us win and half of us lose. If we don't get that we are all in this together, we are just rising up to the bait of the current administration's governing strategy like a pond full of corn-fed trout. We must cultivate our garden by building the community bridge to open our doors wider to the whole community. Create new uses of the nave for the whole community, conversations. Invite new people into our lives to exchange views. Create an inviting environment for a cafe, for gathering in the library. As we laid the cornerstone for our community bridge Friday, was anybody on concrete cam that day, stone cam? We laid the original steps from the church that were laid, the granite steps that were laid down by Mrs. Brown in her big project, her big dream of Emmanuel as a community center and a home for the whole community. They were lifted up and laid as a frame, as a foundation for the Bridges platform. As we laid down that platform, John Mello, the contractor, asked me if we had decided where we would bury our time capsule. Remember we talked about a time capsule? I can't think of a better way for us to cultivate a conversation right here in our own garden about the message we want to send to the future, about our own lives and who we are in these times, than planting and planning a time capsule as we share our home, building a vibrant and loving community. Amen.
Amen.